This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, today I have Landon Porter on the show, which I'm super excited about. He is unlike anybody you will ever meet before, or that you have ever met before. And if you get on and watch his lives, he's always smoking a pipe and spitting some real value. So appreciate you being on, Landon.
Thanks for having me, Gabe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I only have one scripted question because I like it. So I use it. And that is, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
I was in seventh grade. I'm not even kidding. I was in seventh grade. I was at one of the new big box stores. I forget the name of the Pace, I think was the original one here in Colorado. Mm-hmm. On the shelf, I saw these giant boxes of these long, skinny Jolly Ranchers. And I was with my grandfather and I was like, can you buy me a couple of boxes of those and I'll sell them at school? And he was like, sure. That was it. Literally. I moved on from that in high school to be an entrepreneur in some other areas that are not as savory. And then I went down a different path. Ultimately, I came back to it, but I'm unemployable, if that makes sense. Like, I really have a hard time dealing with authority as in that if they'll let me do my thing and there's no cap on what I can make, I'm almost good. Does that make sense?
It does. I tell people all the time I'm totally unemployable. It's the greatest blessing in the world, but in my early years, it was a curse because I would literally implode good things because I just couldn't figure it out. So I totally understand. And I relate on the, learning when you're younger of, entrepreneurial things that you don't repeat on camera.
Yep.
Probably maybe different than you, maybe not, but I totally get it.
Uh-huh.
We all do dumb shit in the beginning.
Fact.
So very cool. Yeah, I pretty similar. Like I grew up pretty fucking poor. And I just realized early on if I was gonna make any money and take care of my siblings, so I basically became a father way too young. Like by the time I had my son, I had already practiced on my 5 younger brothers. So it was
wow.
So early on, I was like, well, if I want to get anywhere in life, I got to make money, and I want to be like my landlord who has the Clintons and the Bushes over for dinner, mm-hmm. and not live in our little shitty house. So pretty motivating. So yeah, early on, and you and so many people that I have on the show, and I've never planned this, always tell me a story about how you put yourself directly in the face of rejection. Mm-hmm. People that, like, I had a guy named Calvin Wayman on the show, and he's like, I quit my good paying job and I went for 18 months and did door to door, like encyclopedia sales or something. It was recent. It wasn't encyclopedia. So it was something stupid, hard to sell. He's like, I just did that just to thicken my skin. And like you, I mean, like, it's a little bit easier selling candy to kids, but at very young, you're like, I'm sure people said no, or like, I mean, you're like just cold hard face-to-face sales.
Yeah. Well, and, I was the highest paid youngest manager in a company called Wild Oats that was an all natural, really high end grocery store that competed with Whole Foods early on. I was the highest paid youngest manager in company history, and we had 115 stores nationally. Wow. I left that to go cold call homeowners to refinance their homes. And yeah, that's where my sales journey started. Really, like,
ouch.
Yeah. It was many years before the crash came, mm-hmm. and I'm sure we'll get into all of this, but I'm a chef. I'm a full-on certified chef straight out of high school. My dad's like, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I like food and cars. And at about the same time, my counselor pulled me out of one of my classes. He said, so it's pretty apparent that you hate being here. You get really good grades and all of your shit's turned in on time, but it's pretty apparent you don't want to be here. What do you want to do? I said, well, I like cars and I like to cook. And I ended up going through a trade school part-time along with high school, and eventually became a chef's apprentice at a hotel here in town, 5-star, 4-diamond. And like, I'm a full-on chef. Like, I haven't met anybody personally in my life other than the chefs that I trained under that can cook better than I can.
Wow.
So I went from that to being, and I did it for the money. I was young before I had kids. I went and started working at Wild Oats, and I took almost 100% pay raise when I went from the end of my apprenticeship to that. And I was catering on the side. So I was selling, Bob and Sally were having an anniversary, and they live in a $5 million home in the foothills, and they want like a 7-course meal. So I was selling stuff like that too. But, so I'm a chef, and I went from that to sales, and it was jarring to say the least.
I can imagine. Not that you're never out front, but the chef, you're back in the kitchen hiding. You're not even dealing with the customers like being a server.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Cool. Well, so give me we're kind of part of the way through the story. Give me the fast forward version from there to where you are today, because we kind of bumped into each other together when I realized that you're the head gorilla, which I'll let you explain in a minute, and you have a very unique brand that super stands out. So catch me up to there.
Sure. So I'll give you the short version, then we can go back and you can dig where you want to. Ultimately, the reason that I went from doing the food thing to the sales thing was nights, weekends, and holidays don't work for raising kids. Yeah. So it's right about that time when I had kids that I had to make that shift. And I'd been doing the food thing for quite a long time. I was kind of tired of it. And I got an opportunity to do between 4 and 8 p.m. during the week calling homeowners for a mortgage broker who was getting ready to go out on his own from the company that he was working with. Long story short, 6 months later, I was a full-on mortgage broker and doing the loan officer thing alongside him. We went to work with a couple of guys that had a company, small company, but they could do anything in that space. And I transitioned from that to real estate into real estate investment. And then I saw the crash coming, and I was like, fuck, this isn't going to work. So I started looking around, and interestingly enough, there's actually more money to be made when the economy's down than when it's up for a lot of people. And I found a position doing sales with a company that sells business to business, corporate finance, asset management, and protection, meaning collections to credit insurance and everything in between. Right. Mm-hmm. So I started there, and this is like, my sales ability is like on fire at this point. And they put me on the sales floor like a new trainee, and not to pat myself on the back, but I blew the doors off of everybody else, including the guy that was hired in the same training class on the same day, who also he's still actually in the industry. We were running mates for a long period of time. He was good, but not quite as good because of positive indifference, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. Within 10 months, I was vet status. I had a full salary. I had my own office. They offered me 6 or 8 months later to take over somebody else's book of clients, and then moved me in the direction of big client management, where I was dealing with like Fortune 1000, Fortune 500s, and ultimately the Fortune 100 globally. Yeah. And I spent 10 years doing that, and I absolutely hate the industry. And I think where you kind of want to go is this thing. About halfway through my 15-year sales career, is about 2.5 years into that corporate finance job, I woke up one morning and I was like staring at myself in the mirror after a shower. I was like, I hate you. Like, and I didn't ask, and I usually ask this, what's the language on your show? If I need to tone it down.
Nope, you're good. Whatever you want.
So it's 4:38, and I'm standing at the counter in the bathroom, just out of the shower, 4:38 a.m. And I've got to drive like an hour plus across town to this job that I hate. Yeah. And my wife's still sleeping, and I'm like, I said it verbally out loud. I was like, I fucking hate you. I was so miserable and so pissed off and so angry, right? I'm really good at what I do. I make really good money, but I'm miserable.
Yep.
And right at about the same time, my kids were going from little kids to preteens. And that relationship is a big change, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
I spent like 6 months trying to figure out A, what the deal was, and then B, is it something that I could fix, and C, if I could fix it, how do I do that? What it came down to was I was so good at the skill of making people do what I wanted to on a cold call that I was bringing on clients that ultimately I couldn't fucking stand. And I could, if they stayed on the phone long enough, they bought. Meaning if I made 200 phone calls a day and had 40 conversations and 20 of them it made sense for.
Yep.
Right.
Not bad.
Out of those 20, if 5 of them stayed on the phone, they became clients. And that's fantastic from a money standpoint. But in that world, where the money's at is managing the client long-term, right? You do the thing once, bring on a client, and then you've got them ongoing and you get paid service fees and whatnot.
Right.
So I'm in this situation. I hate my clients. I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? Because I'm making really good money. I'm totally backed in a corner. I've got young kids. I'm a young guy. You know, I'm living at So I had totally adjusted my process on how I went about getting clients. I'm sure we'll spend most of our time there, but over the next about 7 years in that industry, I kind of fine-tuned that to where I wasn't in an industry where if you were a client management guy, a CSD, client service development, you called your clients all the time. I had a book of 400 clients. Okay, if you're going to call them all the time, you're still calling 50, 60, 70 people a day having conversations, right? If you're a cold caller and you're opening clients, you're calling 200 to 300 a day. I got it to the point where I was making 10 phone calls a month. And I was making more money than anybody else. Jeans and a t-shirt. I didn't have to adhere to the rules. I worked from home most of the time and I made more money. And that brings us to 2016. I decide, okay, again, I'm done with this, right? I'm tired of this. Ash and I go start a parenting course and a parenting group teaching people who had kids that are preteens how to not deal with their nonsense and at the same time keep them safe.
Yeah.
That takes off. At the end of 2016, I get a new Facebook ads course and I start having conversations with people in that group where I'm asking them questions about, okay, cool. If I want to run this ad set like this, like, how do I do that? And by proxy, because I build relationships, they're asking me and telling me about their day. And I end up coaching about a half a dozen guys, and all within a week, those guys are all like, dude, you need to fucking teach this. This being how to get clients, how to deal with that, how to do the sales call, all of those pieces. And I was like, no, I'm not. I was dragged into it. And here we are like 14, 15 months later, and it's a full-on business. So there's the
short version of the long life. Very cool. Yeah, there's a lot that I relate to, that, you know, from what you had sent over in the notes before and just what you're talking about now. I actually built a multi-million-dollar construction company, lost in the housing market crash, which was super painful and super valuable lessons. And then I went to did a turnaround at a repossession company. So not as far in as you in the collections and finance and stuff, but super familiar. Mm-hmm. It's reverse sales is what we used to always tell everybody in collections. Mm-hmm. And then a few other things, and, you know, and landed where I am today, you know, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, can totally relate. So if I've heard this the pattern of your story before, where people are like, I was crushing it and I was like showing up for 4 hours a week or making 10 phone calls. So that sounds like it sparked what is today the group that you run. So let's dive into that, talk about kind of what you learned, what you applied, because that sounds impossible to people until they hear how to do it. And then how that went to kind of building the group that you've had. And I mean, you have a huge, really successful group, which is something I haven't tapped into a lot. I just have a couple small groups, and it's I'm super interested about that too. So
sure. So in that process where people were like, dude, you need to teach this. And I was like, dude, no, the fuck I don't. Like, I have zero interest. And the reason being was because when Grant Cardone went from just the car sales training guy to he was selling his training to corporations, the company that I worked for was one of the first companies that went through that training, and I was forced to go through it. And it was right at that period where I was like, that's why I hate this. And literally I told my direct manager, the branch manager of the location that I was at, I said, I've done this for 5 weeks and it looks like there's like another 15 or 20 weeks to this training. And if you make me go through another one, I will leave today and I will quit. And I was managing a big book of clients and they loved me. Right. So it's like, oh my God, we can't let that happen. I have a totally different take on sales, and specifically now for who I serve, I have a completely drastically different take on sales. one of the things that we talked about before we started this was you're going to query me on, and you're going to challenge me on the cold calling thing. Here's the deal. If you take 100 people that are cold calling, and that's how they're generating their clients, maybe 3 of them are really good at it. And out of those 3, maybe 1 or 2 of those people love the chase that much that that's actually the thing they do. That's their genius zone, is that chase.
Yeah.
Where the thing they provide their clients is secondary, which is not what most people do. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I was like, okay, fine. Somebody else created the group and said, here's the group that we're going to do this in. That person added like 100 people to the group in like a day and a half. I went in and did a Facebook Live, which is weird because I was a phone monkey for 15 years, but Facebook Live was fucking terrifying, right? And the first dozen times I did it was really weird, but I went on and basically just laid it out on the line what my thoughts were about sales, and people ate it up. Out of the 100, I think there was 108 people in the group, and like 92 of the people that were in that group commented on that video within the next day or two, and it just like took off, right? So in sales and marketing, there's a couple of key pieces that you need to have. You need to know exactly who your perfect prospect is, exactly what they want, and exactly how to deliver that to them. These people all wanted sales. They wanted what you and I know to be the magic phrase that closes just anybody at the end of a conversation, which doesn't exist.
Yeah,
but they think that's what sales is. It took me a couple of months to kind of figure out, the people that are currently in my world want this magic phrase thing that doesn't exist, and they're not really the people I want to serve. Who would I want to serve if I could provide my skill set to somebody who wanted to learn something? And that's a different prospect than somebody who's going to go crush it cold calling. Now, with that said, our group transitioned from who was there and paying attention to these other people. And here they are, service-based business owners who are really good at the thing that they do. They've got a skill set or an experience that they can provide that long-term, and they need clients to be able to do that, but they're not a salesperson.
Right.
Getting clients and learning how to get clients with the technology that we've got is not the same, and it is way easier than learning the actual sales process. Here's my thing. Out of those 100 people that will and are cold calling, 3 of them are good at it. That means 97% of them aren't good at it.
Right.
Most people don't have the time and will put in the effort to get good at it, because it's not a 3-week practice trial run thing to get good at it.
3-year thing if you're lucky.
Exactly. And ultimately, I want to serve people that have the means to pay me, which is not somebody who's like, oh my God, I need my next client yesterday and I'm broke and I can't afford it. That's not who I want to serve.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a little bit of the behind the scenes thing. So then once I figured out who it was that I wanted to serve, coaches, consultants, service-based business owners that are actually good at their craft, here's the other piece of the cold outreach thing. If you're good at it and you can generate clients that way, if you stop doing that activity, guess what? The client flow stops.
Yep.
Oh, so it's not that Landon hates cold calling and thinks everybody sucks at it, which are both true. It's more that if you're actually a business owner with a craft that you can do for other people, it's not the most effective way to generate clients. It is the fastest if you're decent at it,
right,
and need clients right now, yesterday. But as soon as you stop doing that activity, the client flow stops, meaning most people are good at their craft and they don't want to cold call to begin with.
Right. So they have a terrible time getting clients in, and it's like up and down if at best.
At best.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are. What is this? March? We're mid-March. So we're 14 months into the group and the business and what we do and all of that. And for me, it comes down to this, which is where I ended up with in the prospecting thing. For me, it's all quality over quantity, meaning if I can do the same thing with 5 really good clients that I could do and everybody else does with 50 or 100 or 200 clients, it seems to me that I would have to work less and I would have more enjoyment dealing with people that I would like if I went with much higher paying clients that I had an actual relationship with, and the money thing was secondary,
Yeah.
right? So the reason that our group is so highly active is because we deny between 50 and 60% of the people that request to join, and that most of the people that come in, we put them through a sales process, the qualifying process, and a percentage of them stay. And so we have a group of 13,000 people, but we've got an active group of about 12,000 people.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Very cool. So how do you qualify people? Because I love your mindset of what you're talking about. And I guess on multiple fronts, we'll kind of cover this. You obviously we need to qualify people that you want to work with that are going to pay you, that's the higher level conversation. But also, I mean, I'm in your group. You didn't charge me to be in your Facebook group. So why did I get in and not somebody else? Like, how are you qualifying group members? Because Facebook groups are probably just as valuable or as untapped as LinkedIn is right now. And they're just starting to mature, in my opinion. And so I'm really curious to just kind of hear what your thoughts are about both of those.
So one of the things that we teach our students, we do have a course, we teach people how to get clients, is what is called a relationship funnel. And for those of us salespeople that are listening to this show, what that is basically is it's a sales conversation that you don't have to be present for. And you asked, how do I qualify people? So here's what I realized. Okay. If I'm going to go through the process to onboard a client, everybody starts from the point of, do they need it? Do they want it? Can they afford it?
Yep.
Fantastic. Go get married to somebody that you use those things to qualify them. And then in 6 months, tell me how fun it is when one or the other is chasing somebody around the house with a butcher knife.
Tried that twice, so I know what you're saying.
None of us salespeople qualify our clients from the perspective of, do I actually like you? Do we relate? Here's the thing. And I think this is something that your audience will probably resonate with. Here's what sales is. Sales is manufacturing relatability to cause no like and trust to happen so that it's easy to get the sale. Humans as an animal have a natural thing that we use to relate with other people. Our personality, our characteristics, who we are in the world. Okay. Meaning, if I give you permission to just be exactly who the fuck you are and you own that weirdness 100%, and you're okay with the fact that there's some people that are going to like me, which means some people aren't going to like me, which also means that there's going to be some people that love me, and I'm going to have to deal with the fact that some people hate me. If I can get to that point and I can just be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. Oh, and by the way, this is the skill set that I have. The people that naturally relate to that, I don't have to manufacture that. I can take off the sales mask, right? In the sales world, if you can talk to anybody, you're considered a chameleon, right? You can go in and do the listening thing, and you can understand who they are, and you can find points to relate to them on, right? And this is the salesy thing that most people suck at. Oh, da, da, da. It's not like that. If we can naturally relate to each other to begin with, that relationship, that's why it's called relationship, forms naturally. There's nothing there that we have to front.
Right.
If that's the case, then the BS meter never goes into the red. And then if they want and need the thing that we provide, which are the parameters of the qualification process, then it's just, here, if you want it, here's how you get it. Right. That's the magic phrase that closes the right prospects.
Right.
Any prospect.
They're asking you for it. You're not pushing it and cramming it down their throat.
Exactly. So in our Facebook group, we created a relationship funnel that we drive all of the people to. And it's basically a funnel. It's a colander within a funnel that vets people against my personality first, my language, the way I talk, the way I am, what I believe. I'm pretty free with my language. There's a reason for that, right? We've had people email us and be like, whoa, you said the F word publicly. I can't be a part of this. Good. Get the fuck out of here.
Exactly.
So
I have a couple things. One, I have a reason of why I curse personally, but I have a reason for why I curse when I'm on a live or do a podcast or when I'm in person with people. But I'm curious to hear why you do it. If you just don't give a shit and you don't think about it, or if there's a reason behind it, because I have a reason behind it.
Yeah. One, it's a pattern interrupt. Two, it is, it's if you have a problem with language, my opinion is that you're not my kind of people, meaning I'm intelligent. Like on the scale, I don't even want to say what I am, but intelligence and emotional intelligence. And if you've got a problem with the way I say something, then go the fuck away quickly and quietly. That's why.
No, that's cool. That's exactly. There's all sorts of stuff that I read that I find very interesting. I always use it for a pattern interrupt because it's just helpful for communication, which my primary goal, having you on, being on a show, doing a live, sending something, is I want to serve you. And in order to serve you, you have to be able to understand me and we have to gel. Yep. So I totally use it for a pattern interrupt because it clicks people back in. I use tons of linguistic things like that. And as an aside, there's very interesting stuff. If you actually read, people that curse a lot are way smarter than people that don't. I don't know why that is. That I've never dug into, but I've read enough about it that it's very interesting to me. And obviously, like, I'm not teaching my 7-year-old to say fuck, because that's disruptive to his school life, but I'm never going to punish him for saying it.
Right. Ever.
Ever. So, like, you probably shouldn't say that at church when you're with your mom, and you probably shouldn't say that at school because that will just cause you, there's no good outcome.
Right.
So
until you're an adult, all it does is cause BS that you have to deal with. That's a big thing in my world. I eliminate as much nonsense and BS as possible because I don't have time for it, right? I don't want to deal with drama and nonsense. Once you're an adult, outside of the pattern interrupt thing like this, like when I'm doing Facebook Lives, right? That's one thing. It's a pattern interrupt for the people that don't know me. It's like, oh, pay attention. What else is he going to say that might offend me?
Right. Exactly.
But I also at the same time don't curse like a sailor when I'm out in public. There's a time and a place for it, but it's also not scripted.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So something else you said, which is very interesting the way that you portrayed it, because it makes a lot of sense to me, is I use the chameleon kind of allegory to say, like, this is where you ultimately want to get. But I think that I've probably misled people at some level, because for me, it's easy for me to talk to anybody because I've had a lot of life experience, like across the board. So it's legit, authentic me. Like, I know what it's like to have people threaten to shoot you when you're pulling their car out of their driveway. I didn't make that up. Like, that happened to me. So I can relate to you as a repossession agent or a collection person, because you've had some verbal abuse at best. But so for me, it's just like inherent part of who I am. But I'm very interested to hear the rest of kind of more of what you're talking about too, because like I've probably misguided people in saying, like, learn to relate. It really should be what you said, which is learn to be you and see who follows you. So.
This is going to be interesting. Let's see what we can do here. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but let's.
No, you're good. I'm all up for whatever.
What do you believe is the most important skill as it applies to sales? The most important, end all be all. What do you think that is?
Transfer of belief.
Okay. I actually believe that it's listening. Okay. Now,
that makes sense.
There's some core fundamental ingredients that are generally taught, but they're kind of like skimmed over, right? Yeah. Empathize with your prospect, right? Mm-hmm. What does that actually mean? And how do you get to that? Okay. Well, what that actually means is understanding somebody.
Yeah.
How do you understand somebody? You listen to them.
Yep.
How do you listen to them? Well, you've got to ask them questions.
Yeah.
How do you get them talking? Okay, so there's these core fundamental pieces, but here I'll explain the chameleon thing. To be able to do that, what it means is obviously you need to have some life experience. You've got to be able to talk to just about anything. You've got to be able to relate, which means that you have the ability to empathize with somebody. The only way that you can do that is to listen, and the only way that you can listen is prompt them to talk. And how do you get somebody talking? Ask them about themselves. Most salespeople do that in a really poor way. What is ultimately the most important thing to your prospect? What it is that they're trying to fix.
Right. Solve their problem. They're trying to solve their problem. That's the only reason they're giving you time.
Right. Now, if you really understand that, and to get to the understanding of that, you need to understand who they are within that organization or within that situation, right? A controller at a company, unless they've got long-term life experience and this is the thing they're going to do long-term, they don't really give a fuck. They took this position because they were a credit manager and it was an upgrade in pay.
Right.
And yeah, they care quarterly because they're and on and on and on. But when you get down to it, what they actually care about is them looking like a rock star enough to get that next promotion to finance director, and on and on and on, their own path. When everybody else that I was competing with was selling that the solution for them was money for the company.
Yeah.
Okay. So it comes down to listening, but you got to have something to listen to, which means you've got to be really good at asking questions. To be really good at asking questions, you need to understand who you're speaking with. And then to be able to go anywhere with that, you've got to have enough life experience or the ability to actually put yourself in their shoes to understand them. Let's go back to this 100 people that are cold calling right now for their livelihood. 3 of them are naturally gifted at that. And it's not the gift of gab,
right?
It's the gift of understanding other people. And if those 3 people are that good at that thing, they should go sell yachts and $1 million things. And that's what they should do, not be an entrepreneur, not be a business owner. The 2 people that are amazing at that because they love the chase, they should absolutely go partner with somebody, start their own company, and be the driving force of the sales aspect.
Yeah.
For the 97 people out of the 100 that aren't good at that, about 30 of them think that they're really good salespeople because they have the gift of gab.
Yeah.
Right.
They achieve nothing.
What's really interesting about being a podcast guest is the roles are reversed, right? I'm doing 80% of the talking, you're doing 20%, and 80% of that's asking me questions. So flip this around. For me to be a really good salesperson, I need to do 20% or less of the talking on a sales call or in person. And 80% of that time that I'm talking needs to be questions that gets them and keeps them talking. So I have enough information to begin to understand them and then ultimately be able to prescribe a solution to their issue. Right? Now, most people don't have any idea on how to actually listen. It gets really interesting because a lot of people think they're good salespeople. Fantastic. Go have fun with that. The people that I want to serve look at it and go, okay, cool. For me to be able to bring in 5 clients a month at $5,000 a piece, which is like the train that I'm on, I need to ultimately be cold calling 2 or 3 hours a day. Well, if I do the cold calling thing or the cold outreach through LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, 2 or 3 hours a day to get me those 5 clients a month, man, that's a lot of time. But then I want to go on vacation and then it's like the realtor. I have 7 closings this month and I absolutely murdered it. I made a bunch of money, but next month I don't have a prospect.
Yep.
Roller coaster.
It's the worst. I've been on that in years past.
So let's bring it back to whom is it that we're serving? Are we actually serving salespeople that are cold calling, that are working for a good corporation selling a phenomenal product? Let's have that conversation. Are we talking to entrepreneurs who are really good at their thing? They've got long-term life experience. They just need to go do it on their own and bring in their own clients. Or are we talking to entrepreneurs who think that they found the shiny object last week and they're going to make $1 million next week? Like, whom is it that we're talking to? Because it changes the conversation, right? And this is where I get really interested because this is the dynamics of human communication.
I love it. So I'll give you a little more background for what my answer, because I think we're pretty much on the same page. I always get people to talk because then I'll figure out where their goal is. Like, they don't need this piece of software or this ad platform or this website or consulting from me. That's irrelevant in the moment there. But if I can learn about the fact that you talk about this class, like that you're trying to deal with your kids going from being kids to teens, you have this vision of how you want it to be, then I can say, okay, I've heard you say X, Y, and Z. I totally understand what it's like to have a kid, or, before I would say I totally understand it's like I raised my little brothers, and you know what, I know what you're looking for, and I'll make sure that we're on the same page. And then if I have the right solution, which anybody in sales has sold the wrong solution before, we've all done the wrong thing. But as I realize like how to sell the right solution, it's just me understanding that what I have is going to solve your problem. And then I just share that with you. And it's transfer of the belief that I know that I can actually serve you with a legitimate solution.
Yep.
And so I love how you explained it, though. You explained it much better. But what I love about what you're talking about, it's so authentic, and here's why. Because everybody is sick of the gurus on the internet, and everybody is sick of the Bitcoin millionaires, and everybody is sick of all this shit that people are saying, oh, you can just click a website and make millions of dollars. Everybody knows that inherently. Nobody woke up and believed that lie, until they had it ran down their throat, or they lied to themselves. And people know that there's really true good value in people that are good at their craft, are good at what they do. And to see on multiple fronts, to see that little guy, we'll call him at the moment, succeed is such a hero's story that we all want that to happen. I want to be that. I want to take my craft and make it something good that helps a lot of people in the world. I want anybody else in the group to have that happen. I mean, that's what we really want. Like, I believe that people are good deep down. I believe that people do really stupid, shitty things all the time to others. I had plenty of that today already, actually. But legitimately, I think if you cut away all that bullshit and all the pain or whatever is exhausting out of their mouth, that people are good people. And so when you really tap in at that level, man, it's easy to connect and be a part of something good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I 100% agree. And I will say this, I think that the vast majority of people on this planet are good people. We just want stuff sooner than it ought to really happen, right?
Yeah.
You can blame whatever you want to blame, but ultimately I want a thing and I want it to happen as quickly as possible. And most of us will shortcut enough things to get there that we don't do the getting it well.
Yeah.
And that's why sales is in the situation that it's in. If you go back to Zig Ziglar's training 50, 60 years ago, and you actually start from square one and go through his entire process, or you go through Sandler, or even somebody like Grant Cardone, if you take the excitement out of that thing and understand, like you said earlier, at minimum, it's a 3-year practice all the time thing. It's like learning martial arts. If you're going to eventually be great at the thing, it takes years.
Only 5,000 kicks or whatever my black belt instructor tells me. So
we don't have the patience, right? So we look for the shortcuts, and sales is one of those things where it's like finding the love of your life. It's not meant to work phenomenal between you and everybody. And here's something that I've been saying lately a lot. You don't have a sales problem. You have a prospect problem. If you don't identify who your perfect for you client is to begin with and put parameters around that, you're throwing darts at a wall with a blindfold on. You have no idea what you're focusing on.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense. I've always struggled with niching down because I didn't understand it I honestly didn't understand it that well till very recently. But I also am always looking for wide and for scale. But you only actually scale, which is what I'm learning, when you do niche down, which is so contrary to how we think about it.
Go ahead.
Or sorry, if you had a thought about that, go ahead. I have a question about the group.
Yeah, I'll try and make this quick. That was the fastest thing that got me to 6 figures in my last 9 to 5 was understanding I can sell these services, collections, AR management, factoring, credit insurance, credit info to anybody who has a business who extends credit.
Right.
Cool. That conversation is basically the same with everybody. It's essentially the same objections. It's essentially the same requirements. Okay, cool. But that conversation on the other person's side, when they're dealing with all the other salespeople calling them all the time, they feel like that. They don't feel special. They don't feel like you're talking to just me. I'm just another number. Cool. So you just cut 50% of your potential clients right out of there because you're not talking to a specific individual. Okay, cool. Well, how do I take that to the next level? Well, if I focus on one industry, that conversation becomes much more succinct. Cool. Well, within that industry, there's niches, right? Well, within those niches, there are companies that do $5 million a year revenue and $500 million a year revenue. Do you think the people that are managing those companies are different kinds of people? Yes. Cool. So if I went after companies that do $200 to $300 million in revenue in that industry, doing that specific kind of concrete work, are those conversations much more specifically similar than just somebody who owns a kiosk that sells sandwiches and they do 50 grand a year? Yeah. Right. Bob owes him for 7 sandwiches, but does that make sense?
Yep.
So niching down goes like that. And that's one of the things that I did early on, that I was the fastest to vet status in a company history that was the global leader in asset management and protection. And I did it in the fastest amount of time, making the most money. How? Simple. I figured out exactly who I needed to go after, and I only went after those people.
Is that how you worked 10 hours a week or whatever you said? Whatever.
So, yeah. You were in the construction world. Have you ever heard the name Lafarge?
Yep.
Okay. They were my first big breakthrough client, like 7 months into that industry, and I lucked into it.
Nice.
Okay. Well, move forward about 4 years and I started working oil and gas. Why? I sound like a blue collar guy, but I'm intelligent enough to be a white collar guy. Who do I talk to? I talk to people who wear blue jeans, drive a 10-year-old pickup truck with 100,000 miles on it, and they've got $90 million in the bank, and they don't know how much money they make. And it's a family business 4 generations back in oil and gas. That's my guy.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So once I understood that and I was beginning to have those conversations, it became oil and gas, but a very specific niche in that. Well, once you're at that level, hey, Bob, I work with Joe over at XYZ Petroleum. Oh, no shit. What do you do? We do XYZ. Oh, man, that's such a pain in the ass for us. Da, 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 da. Now we're in a conversation. I didn't have to say, Joe told me to call you. I didn't have to say, go call Joe. I didn't have to say any of that, because that transfers all of that info in a very short period of time, because I understand my client. Bob and Joe are identical. They operate in 2 different states, but they know each other and have for 20 years. 5 phone calls, 4 clients.
I love it. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, and what you just said makes total sense. I've never thought about it that way. When you say, hey, I work with so and so, you just transferred 20%, 20 years of information in 3 or 4 words. That's insane.
And I've got to be good at what I do, and I've got to do really good for Bob, because inevitably before Joe signs the contract for mid 6 figures,
right,
and then it's a mid 5-figure monthly fee to do what we do, he's going to have a conversation with Bob.
Right.
But that opens up the conversation. It's like there's so many, we could have a 5-hour conversation about how to go get clients in that manner.
Right.
But it comes down to knowing your clients and building relationships, and to do that, you have to listen.
Yeah. Fantastic, man. Well, you've already made me $250,000, and it's been just a few minutes, so appreciate it. So let's move back over to the group, because this is something I'm super curious about, and I think you've answered already, but I'd like you to dig into it a little bit more. So
Sure.
This group is full of people like you that are not afraid to say the word fuck, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But let's dig into like how you started attracting. Has it been completely viral, or have you run any ads to it, or what's been the process of saying, oh, I now know who I'm going after? Clearly described. How do we go from a 13,000 member group with 95% active, or whatever that is stats wise?
So you're a sales guy. If I said strategic partnership, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can go try and get one client at a time, or I can go build a relationship with somebody who has a good client base that serves basically the same clients in a different capacity than I do. I went early on. Once I realized this could be a thing and it like started to feed itself in all the different aspects, I went and built strategic partnerships. I'm sure you know Arnie Giske.
Know the name. I don't know if I know him though.
Millennial entrepreneur community, 50,000 people. He teaches people how to build Facebook groups for profit. And he's good at it. I built a strategic partnership early on with him, and we did a big event in like September. We took over his group. We basically guerrilla marketing, went and like guerrilla marketed, and we kidnapped Arnie. He was off doing an event. We took over his group, the branding, the whole 9 yards, and we basically taught our brand of sales and marketing, and it was like a big thing. Well, that was one of like 7 things like that we did last year.
Nice.
Through strategic partnerships, through relationships. Our group has grown the way it's grown because we're on the suggested and the recommended, because it's so active, because there's so much, as Facebook sees it, quality in the group.
Right.
But I've also been doing a lot of this. I think I'm somewhere just under 100 interviews, 100 shows, podcasts, or Facebook Lives with people who have other audiences. Some of the people in your audience are going to be like, Ryan Stewman's my guy. I'm never going to listen to Landon. Fantastic. Go have at it.
Exactly.
Find your guy and go learn. Like seriously.
Right.
And other people in your audience are going to be, man, some of the shit he said was so like here, like I get it, I feel it. And they're gonna learn from you and me, right?
Exactly.
That's how we've grown the group.
Good answer, man. All right. Well, you've given a ton of value, which I super appreciate. And I love getting to know people like this, because you're like me, we're kind of from home, or, it's nice to reconnect with, it's nice to see people face to face after years of not having instant video like we do now, and having been working from home for a long time. So I really appreciate the time. Any last words or nuggets, or obviously I'm going to share the link to the group and to what you're up to, but what's the easiest way to get a hold of you, or, what are your final thoughts here?
Sure. I'll let you drop the link to the group. It's just our free Facebook group. I don't have anything to sell to any of you guys. We as a culture globally are at the point where what we ultimately want is connection. We all have needs. We all have wants. We all are looking for people to lead us in specific areas of our life. If you have the ability to impact somebody else's world, and you actually can do that thing, if you will just be who the fuck you are and own that shit 100%, as weird as you are, you will call to you your tribe. And it comes with the understanding, if I really speak my mind, some people aren't going to like it, and you have to be okay with that. But that's what the world is requiring of you that's listening to the show right now. If you want what you think you want, that's what you have to do. That's it.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Landon. We will definitely have you back, and everybody should go check out his group. It's full of crazy, awesome people like Landon, and I'm having a blast in there so far. So I super appreciate you being on, man. Thank you.
Awesome sauce, Gabe. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.